What if every time you became intimate with someone, your soul was permanently altered? Not just your body, not just your feelings, but something deep within you, your essence, your energy, your unconscious patterns, forever changed. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist who explored the mysteries of the soul, revealed that no intimate connection is ever just physical. Behind every touch, every moment of closeness, there's an invisible exchange happening, a merging of shadows, memories, and emotional wounds. Have you ever wondered why some connections leave you haunted? Why certain people enter your life and change everything, not just what you feel, but who you are? This isn't romance. This is alchemy, an invisible transformation that few people ever understand, but everyone feels. If you've ever walked away from someone and felt like you lost or found a piece of yourself, this video will finally explain why. The invisible mark that never fades. Every person you've ever been intimate with has left something inside you. Not a memory, not a feeling, something deeper. Jung discovered that when two people connect on an intimate level, there's an exchange that happens beneath the surface of consciousness. Your energy field, your emotional blueprint, your very essence absorbs pieces of theirs while they take pieces of yours. Think about it. You can probably remember the exact moment someone first touched your soul through their eyes, their words, their presence. That moment when everything shifted, when the air itself felt different. What you experienced wasn't just attraction or chemistry. It was recognition. Your unconscious mind recognizing patterns, wounds, and energies that matched something deep within you. This invisible mark works like emotional DNA. Once it's there, it becomes part of who you are. It influences how you see the world, how you react to certain situations, how you connect with others who come after. Some people carry dozens of these invisible marks, collected over years of intimate encounters. Others carry just a few, but those few run so deep they've shaped their entire personality. The fascinating part is that you don't get to choose which marks stick and which ones fade. Your unconscious mind makes that decision based on what it needs for your psychological development. Sometimes the person who barely touched your life leaves the deepest mark, while someone you loved for years leaves almost no trace at all. Jung understood that these marks aren't random. They appear exactly when your soul needs them. Each invisible mark represents a lesson your psyche is trying to learn, a wound it's trying to heal, or a strength it's trying to develop. The person who left that mark becomes a teacher, whether they know it or not. What makes this even more profound is that these marks don't just influence your future relationships. They change how you relate to yourself, the way you see your own worth, your own desires, your own capacity for love. All of this shifts after each intimate connection. You literally become a different person, carrying pieces of everyone who has ever touched your soul. Some marks feel heavy, like scars that remind you of pain or betrayal. Others feel light, like gifts that enhance your ability to love and trust. But all of them are permanent. They become part of the complex tapestry of who you are, influencing decisions you make years later in ways you might never consciously realize. The most powerful marks come from connections where both people's shadows met, where their deepest fears, their hidden desires, their unhealed wounds touched each other. These encounters create the deepest impressions because they involve parts of yourself you rarely show anyone else. When someone sees your shadow and accepts it, or when someone's shadow triggers your own, the mark they leave can transform your entire understanding of what intimacy means. This is why some people can walk into your life for just a moment and change everything, while others can be present for years without leaving much of an impact. It's not about time or intensity of feeling. It's about depth of recognition, about how much of your true self was revealed and touched during that connection. Understanding this invisible mark helps explain why moving on from certain people feels impossible, even when logic tells you it should be easy. Part of them is literally inside you now, woven into your psychological fabric. You're not just missing them. You're missing the part of yourself that only existed when you were with them. By the way, if you're curious to go even deeper and integrate your shadows and light, check out the SIM Method ebook. It's a concise guide that can help you unlock your inner power in just 5 minutes a day. The link is in the first pinned comment below. When your shadow meets theirs. Your shadow is everything you hide from the world. Your secret shame, your buried anger, your forbidden desires, the parts of yourself you've decided are too dark, too messy, too much for anyone else to handle. Jung knew that we all carry this shadow, and most of the time we work hard to keep it locked away. But then someone comes along who somehow finds the key. They don't just see your perfect, polished surface. They see the raw, unfiltered truth underneath. And instead of running away, they stay. Or maybe their own shadow is so similar to yours that recognition happens instantly. Two broken pieces fitting together in a way that feels both terrifying and inevitable. When shadows meet, something magical and dangerous happens. All the energy you've spent hiding parts of yourself suddenly gets redirected. Instead of using your strength to maintain masks and walls, you can use it to actually live. To feel everything you've been afraid to feel. To want things you've convinced yourself you shouldn't want. This is why some intimate connections feel so intense they're almost unbearable. You're not just dealing with regular emotions. You're dealing with years of suppressed feelings that are finally being allowed to surface. It's like opening a dam that's been holding back a flood. The person who can handle your shadow becomes incredibly precious to you, but also incredibly threatening. They know things about you that you barely admit to yourself. They've seen you at your most vulnerable, your most human, your most flawed. This creates a bond that's deeper than love, deeper than attraction. It's recognition at the soul level. But here's what most people don't understand. When someone accepts your shadow, they're not just giving you permission to be yourself. They're forcing you to integrate parts of yourself you've been rejecting. Suddenly, you can't pretend those aspects don't exist anymore. You have to find a way to live with them, to make peace with them, to incorporate them into your sense of self. This integration process isn't comfortable. It means admitting that you're not the person you thought you were. It means accepting that you have capacity for things you've judged in others. It means owning parts of your personality that you've spent years trying to deny or change. Some people can't handle this level of self-awareness. They pull away from anyone who sees their shadow too clearly, preferring relationships that allow them to maintain their illusions about themselves. But others find it liberating. Finally, they can stop exhausting themselves trying to be perfect and start the real work of becoming whole. The most transformative, intimate connections happen when both people's shadows complement each other, where one person's hidden rage matches another's secret sadness, where one person's fear of abandonment fits perfectly with another's terror of commitment. These connections create a safe space for both people to explore parts of themselves they've never been able to safely express. When shadows meet and merge, the relationship becomes a laboratory for psychological growth. Every trigger, every conflict, every moment of intense emotion becomes an opportunity to understand yourself better. You start seeing your patterns, your automatic reactions, your deepest motivations with stunning clarity. This is why these connections often feel fated, like they were meant to happen. Your unconscious mind has been searching for someone who could help you integrate your shadow, And when you find them, everything in your psyche recognizes the opportunity for healing and growth. The secret language. Nobody taught you. Before you ever spoke your first word, you were already fluent in a language nobody taught you. The language of energy, of unspoken connection, of souls recognizing each other across space and time. Jung understood that intimate connection happens in this secret language first, before your conscious mind even realizes what's occurring. You've experienced this language without knowing it. The way you can feel someone's presence before you see them. The way certain people make you feel calm or agitated just by being in the same room. The way you sometimes know exactly what someone is thinking without them saying a word. This isn't mystical nonsense. It's your unconscious mind processing thousands of subtle signals and responding with its own. When two people become intimate, they become fluent in each other's secret language. They learn to read micro-expressions, voice tones, energy shifts, breathing patterns. They develop an almost telepathic ability to sense what the other person needs before they ask for it. This creates a level of understanding that goes far beyond what words could ever accomplish. But this secret language isn't just about communication. It's about synchronization. When two people spend enough intimate time together, their nervous systems begin to regulate each other. Their heartbeats synchronize. Their breathing patterns align. Their brainwaves start to match. They literally begin operating as a single system instead of two separate ones. This synchronization explains why being separated from someone you're intimately connected to can feel physically painful. You're not just missing their presence. Your nervous system is missing its regulatory partner. Part of your biological functioning has adapted to include them, and now that part is disrupted. The secret language also includes things that happen in silence. The way you can comfort someone just by being near them. The way you can sense when they need space before they know it themselves. The way you can feel their emotions in your own body, even when they're trying to hide what they're feeling. Learning someone's secret language requires incredible vulnerability. You have to let them see how you really react to things, not how you think you should react. You have to trust them with your automatic responses, your unguarded moments, your natural rhythms. Most people never allow anyone this level of access. Once you've learned someone's secret language, forgetting it becomes almost impossible. Even years later, you can still read their signals, still sense their moods, still know what certain looks or gestures mean. This is why running into past intimate connections can feel so overwhelming. Your unconscious mind immediately switches back to their language, flooding you with forgotten patterns of recognition and response. The most profound intimate connections happen when two people develop a completely unique secret language together. Gestures, looks, touches that mean something specific just between them. Private jokes that aren't funny to anyone else. Ways of being together that feel like coming home to a country nobody else has ever visited. This secret language becomes part of how you understand intimacy itself. Every future connection gets compared to this template. You find yourself searching for someone else who can learn your language as well as they did. Someone who can create that same level of unspoken understanding. But here's what Jung discovered. The secret language you develop with one person teaches you things about yourself that you carry into every future relationship. You learn what kinds of signals you send when you're scared, when you're happy, when you're falling in love. You become more fluent in your own secret language, which makes you better at teaching it to others. The mirror that shows your hidden self. Other people aren't just other people. They're mirrors, reflecting back parts of yourself that you can't see any other way. Jung knew that we project onto others the things we can't acknowledge in ourselves, both the beautiful and the ugly. When someone becomes intimately close to you, they become your most accurate mirror. showing you exactly who you really are beneath all your self-deceptions. This mirror effect is why intimate relationships are so confronting. The person you're closest to will inevitably reflect back your patterns, your wounds, your strengths, and your shadows in ways that are impossible to ignore. They become a living representation of your inner world, forcing you to see yourself with brutal honesty. Sometimes what you see in this mirror is wonderful. They reflect back your capacity for love, your hidden talents, your potential for growth. They see strengths in you that you've never recognized, possibilities you've never considered. Through their eyes, you discover parts of yourself that are beautiful and worthy of celebration. But more often, especially in the beginning, the mirror shows you things you'd rather not see. Your jealousy, your neediness, your fear of abandonment, your tendency to control or withdraw. Every reaction you have to them is actually revealing something about your inner landscape. Every time they trigger you, they're showing you where your unhealed wounds are hiding. The mirror effect is most intense when someone reflects back the exact qualities you judge most harshly in yourself. If you've always been critical of needy people, you'll find yourself attracted to someone whose neediness forces you to confront your own dependency. If you pride yourself on being rational, you'll be drawn to someone whose emotional intensity reveals your own suppressed feelings. This is why intimate relationships often feel like emotional boot camp. Every day brings new opportunities to see yourself more clearly, and most of what you see challenges your comfortable illusions about who you think you are. The person you love becomes your greatest teacher, showing you exactly what you need to work on. Some people can't handle what they see in this mirror. They blame their partner for bringing out the worst in them, not understanding that these qualities were always there, just hidden. They jump from relationship to relationship, trying to find someone who will reflect back only their good qualities, never realizing that they're running from themselves. But when you learn to use intimate relationships as mirrors for self-discovery, everything changes. Instead of defending against what you see, you become curious about it. Instead of blaming your partner for triggering you, you thank them for showing you where your work is. You realize that the person who can show you your shadows most clearly is offering you the greatest gift possible, the chance to become whole. The most transformative mirrors are the ones that reflect back both your darkness and your light with equal clarity. They don't try to fix you or change you. They simply show you what's there, without judgment, allowing you to decide what you want to do with what you see. This mirror effect explains why losing someone you were intimately connected to feels like losing part of yourself. They weren't just reflecting who you were in the moment. They were reflecting your potential, your growth, your journey toward becoming more fully yourself. Without their mirror, you lose access to certain aspects of your own identity. Learning to be your own mirror is one of the most important skills intimate relationships teach you. Eventually, you develop the ability to see yourself clearly without needing someone else to reflect your truth back to you. But you never forget the people who first showed you how to look. Why you become addicted to certain people. Some people become like drugs to your system. Not because they're perfect, not because they treat you well, but because they trigger something in your brain chemistry that feels absolutely essential to your survival. Jung understood that this isn't weakness or lack of willpower. It's your unconscious mind recognizing patterns from your earliest experiences and desperately trying to resolve old wounds. The addiction usually starts with intermittent reinforcement. They give you exactly what you need emotionally, but not consistently. Sometimes they're completely present and attentive. Other times they're distant or unavailable. This unpredictability creates the same neural pathways as gambling, flooding your system with dopamine every time they give you attention after a period of withdrawal. But the real addiction happens deeper than behavioral conditioning. It happens when someone accidentally recreates the exact emotional environment of your childhood. If you grew up feeling like you had to earn love, you'll become addicted to people who make you work for their affection. If you learned that love meant chaos and intensity, calm, stable people will feel boring while dramatic ones will feel like home. Your nervous system recognizes these familiar patterns and interprets them as safety, even when they're actually destructive. The person who treats you poorly in the exact same way you were treated poorly as a child doesn't feel wrong to you. They feel familiar. And to your unconscious mind, familiar equals safe, even when it's clearly not. This is why you can know logically that someone isn't good for you while being completely unable to walk away. Your rational mind sees the problems clearly, but your emotional body is convinced that this person holds the key to healing wounds you've carried for decades. Every time they hurt you in familiar ways, part of you believes that if you can just get them to love you properly, you'll finally be able to heal your original wound. The addiction intensifies when trauma bonding occurs. Sharing intense experiences, whether positive or negative, creates powerful neurochemical bonds. If someone hurts you and then comforts you, your brain creates stronger attachment than if they had simply been consistently kind. This is why relationships with lots of conflict and making up feel so intense and difficult to leave. Breaking free from these addictive patterns requires understanding what your system is actually seeking. Usually, it's not really about the other person at all. It's about getting needs met that were neglected early in life. It's about proving to yourself that you're worthy of love. It's about trying to rewrite stories that were written when you were too young to protect yourself. Recovery from person addiction doesn't mean becoming cold or emotionally unavailable. It means learning to recognize when your attraction to someone is based on genuine compatibility versus unconscious wound recognition. It means developing the ability to choose partners who actually treat you well, even if they don't trigger the familiar intensity of your childhood patterns. The most challenging part of breaking these addictions is that the withdrawal feels like death. When you remove someone who has been regulating your nervous system through intermittent reinforcement and trauma bonding, your body goes through actual withdrawal symptoms: anxiety, depression, physical cravings, obsessive thoughts. All of this is real and physiological, not just emotional weakness. Understanding the addiction helps you have compassion for yourself when you find it difficult to leave situations that aren't serving you. Your system isn't broken or weak. It's trying to heal using the only strategies it learned in childhood. The key is teaching it new strategies that actually work. True healing happens when you can appreciate the intensity of addictive connections without needing to stay in them. You can acknowledge that someone taught you important things about yourself, triggered essential growth, and helped you understand your patterns, while still choosing to move toward relationships that support your well-being. The death that happens while you're still alive. When you truly merge with another person's soul, something inside you has to die. Not metaphorically, actually die. The version of yourself that existed before them can't survive the transformation that real intimacy demands. Jung called this psychological death, and he knew it was necessary for genuine growth to occur. This death isn't dramatic or visible from the outside. It happens quietly, in small moments when you realize you can't go back to seeing the world the way you used to. Your old priorities don't make sense anymore. Your old fears seem smaller. Your old ways of protecting yourself become obstacles instead of survival strategies. The part of you that dies is usually the part that was keeping you small, the part that believed you weren't worthy of deep love, the part that thought you had to be perfect to be accepted, the part that was convinced you were too much or not enough for anyone to really handle. When someone sees all of you and chooses to stay, these protective beliefs become obsolete. This death can feel terrifying because those old parts of yourself, even the limiting ones, were familiar. They gave you a sense of identity, a way to navigate the world, a predictable set of responses to life's challenges. Losing them means entering unknown territory with no map, no guarantees, and no familiar ways of being. Some people resist this death so strongly that they sabotage relationships that could transform them. They'd rather stay safely miserable in their known limitations than risk the uncertainty of becoming someone new. They pick fights, create drama, or find reasons to leave rather than surrender to the transformation that intimacy offers. But when you allow this death to happen, something miraculous occurs. The space that opens up where your old self used to be becomes available for your authentic self to emerge. Parts of you that have been buried for years suddenly have room to breathe. Talents you forgot you had begin to resurface. Dreams you abandoned start calling to you again. This is why some relationships feel like coming back to life after years of sleepwalking. The person doesn't just love you as you are. They love you as you could be. They see potential in you that you've given up on seeing in yourself. Their belief in your worth becomes the foundation for you to rebuild your entire sense of self. The death that happens in intimate union isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing process of releasing outdated versions of yourself as you grow and change together. Each deeper level of intimacy requires letting go of another layer of protection, another set of limitations, another false belief about what you deserve. This is why long-term intimate relationships can feel like multiple relationships with the same person. You're not the same people who first fell in love. You've both died and been reborn multiple times through your connection. The person you're with today is different from the person you were with 5 years ago, and that's exactly as it should be. The most beautiful deaths happen when both people are willing to let their old selves go simultaneously. When neither person tries to keep the other stuck in outdated patterns or roles. When they support each other's transformation, even when it's scary or uncertain. Understanding this death helps explain why some relationships don't survive even when there's genuine love present. If one person is ready to transform, and the other is determined to stay the same, the relationship becomes impossible. You can't simultaneously hold on to your old self and surrender to intimate union. The new self that emerges from this death isn't better or worse than who you were before. It's just more true. More authentic, more aligned with who you actually are beneath all the conditioning and protection and fear. The person who can love you through this death and rebirth becomes sacred to you because they've witnessed your transformation from the inside. How 2 becomes 3 without anyone being born. Something mysterious happens when 2 people truly unite at the soul level. A third presence emerges that belongs to neither of them individually but exists only in the space between them. Jung called this the transcendent function, and it represents something greater than the sum of its parts. This third entity isn't a baby or a physical creation. It's a living energy field that contains the combined wisdom, love, and potential of both people. It has its own intelligence, its own needs, its own purpose. Many couples sense this presence without understanding what it is. They just know that what exists between them feels alive and sacred. You can feel this third presence in moments of perfect harmony when you're so synchronized with someone that individual boundaries disappear. In those moments, you're not just 2 people relating to each other. You're both relating to something larger that you've created together. This presence becomes a teacher, showing you things about love and connection that neither of you could learn alone. The third entity requires care and attention to survive. It feeds on genuine intimacy, honest communication, shared vulnerability, and mutual respect. When couples neglect this presence by taking each other for granted, avoiding difficult conversations, or prioritizing everything else above their connection, the third entity begins to fade. This is why some relationships die even when both people still love each other. They stop feeding the presence that exists between them. They focus so much on their individual needs and external responsibilities that they forget to nurture the living connection they've created. Without attention, even the strongest third entity will eventually starve. But when couples understand and honor this presence, their relationship becomes a source of power and wisdom that extends far beyond their personal lives. They become channels for something greater than themselves. Their love starts affecting everyone around them. People want to be near them because they can feel the aliveness of what they've created together. This third entity also serves as a container for the relationship's growth. When conflicts arise or challenges threaten to tear the couple apart, they can turn to this presence for guidance. It holds the memory of their deepest connection and reminds them why they chose each other. It becomes bigger than their individual egos and helps them navigate difficulties from a higher perspective. The most evolved couples learn to make decisions from this third space rather than from their individual desires. They ask not just, "What do I want?" or "What do you want?" but "What does our relationship need?" This creates a completely different dynamic where the relationship itself becomes the priority and both people serve something greater than their separate interests. Creating and maintaining this third presence requires both people to be willing to surrender some of their independence. They have to make space in their lives for something that doesn't belong to them individually. This can feel threatening to people who've worked hard to become self-sufficient or who fear losing their identity in relationships. When the third entity is strong and healthy, it provides both people with resources they don't have access to alone. Enhanced intuition, deeper wisdom, greater capacity for love, increased creativity. All of these emerge from the space between them. They become more than they could ever be individually. This is why losing someone you've created a third entity with feels like losing part of yourself. You're not just missing them. You're missing access to the enhanced version of yourself that only existed in relationship with them. You're grieving the death of the presence you created together, which contained possibilities that can never be recreated with someone else. The new person you become and can never undo. After intimate soul union, you can't go back to who you were before. It's not just that you don't want to. You literally can't. The neural pathways have been rewired. The emotional templates have been updated. The very structure of your identity has been permanently altered. You are now a fundamentally different person, carrying within you the imprint of that connection forever. This transformation isn't something you can choose or refuse. It happens automatically when two souls truly merge. Every belief you held about love gets challenged and often completely rewritten. Every assumption you made about what you could handle emotionally gets tested and expanded. Every limitation you accepted about your capacity for intimacy gets shattered and rebuilt. The new person you become has access to parts of yourself that didn't exist before this connection. New emotional ranges, new ways of thinking, new capacities for both joy and pain. You discover you can feel things you didn't know were possible. You can love in ways you never imagined. You can hurt more deeply than you thought survivable. This expansion doesn't just affect how you relate to romantic partners. It changes everything. How you connect with friends, how you interact with family, how you show up in the world. Once your heart has been opened to certain depths, it can't close back down to its previous size. You're now capable of recognizing and connecting with depth in everyone you meet. The most profound changes often happen in areas you least expected. Maybe you were always practical and logical, but intimate union awakened your creative or spiritual side. Maybe you were always independent and self-reliant, but love taught you the beauty of interdependence. Maybe you were always careful and controlled, but someone's acceptance gave you permission to be spontaneous and wild. Some of the changes feel like gifts: enhanced empathy, deeper capacity for joy, greater ability to be present with life's beauty. But others feel like curses: inability to settle for superficial connections, intolerance for dishonesty or emotional unavailability, heightened sensitivity to others' pain. Once you've experienced soul-level intimacy, everything else feels shallow. This new version of yourself often struggles to fit back into your old life. Relationships that used to satisfy you now feel empty. Activities that used to interest you now seem pointless. Goals that used to motivate you now feel hollow. You've been initiated into a deeper way of being, and returning to surface-level existence becomes impossible. The challenge is learning to integrate this new self into practical daily life. You can't spend every moment operating from soul-level depth. It would be exhausting and impractical. But you also can't pretend that part of you doesn't exist anymore. Finding balance between your expanded capacity and the ordinary demands of life becomes an ongoing practice. This transformation explains why people often say they're grateful for relationships that ended, even when the ending was painful. The person you became through that connection is a gift you get to keep forever. The capacity for love you developed, the self-knowledge you gained, the emotional strength you built. None of that disappears when the relationship ends. Future connections will never be the same because you're not the same. You bring to every new relationship all the wisdom, scars, and expanded capacity from previous intimate unions. Each person who touches your soul adds to the complexity and richness of who you are. You become a living library of intimate experiences, each one teaching you something new about the infinite possibilities of human connection. The most beautiful part of this permanent transformation is that it prepares you for ever deeper levels of intimacy. Each soul union expands your capacity for the next one. You become more skilled at recognizing authentic connection, more willing to be vulnerable, more able to navigate the challenges that deep intimacy inevitably brings. Understanding that these changes are permanent helps you choose your intimate connections more carefully. When you realize that everyone who touches your soul will change who you are forever, you become more selective about who you allow that level of access to your heart. You start to see intimate relationships not just as sources of happiness or comfort, but as sacred, transformational experiences that will literally reshape your identity. So the next time you feel that magnetic pull towards someone, that inexplicable recognition, that sense that this person could change everything, pay attention. Your soul is recognizing an opportunity for transformation that your mind can't yet comprehend. The question isn't whether you'll be changed by intimate connection. You will be, inevitably and permanently. The question is whether you'll embrace that transformation consciously or let it happen to you unconsciously. Because in the end, every soul you touch and every soul that touches you is writing the story of who you're becoming. And that story, once written in the depths of intimate union, can never be unwritten.